Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. By seeing a lot of the feedback that y'all left, y'all really liked this last episode that I did on Tales of the Firearms Industry, so today we're going to continue with another one. Well, this episode is going to be called the Type 99 That Could Talk. I know many of us, when we start researching into military surplus and military history in general, we wish that objects could tell us the story of their background and what it was like, when they were fielded. Well, this Type 99 took me on a three-part journey, and it was kind of weird in how they say that things come in threes. Well, this had a really eerie but interesting three-part lesson it had to teach me. Before we get too deep into it, I do want to address a couple things that were brought up in the last episode. I'm still very cool with my boss that I used to work at this company. I do plan on talking to him and making sure that, if I do name drop or talk about the company in general, that he's okay with that. I hope most of you will understand. I'll keep it anonymous until that point. But as long as I do get the okay from him, I will gladly, share about it because it's a great company. The gentleman that owns it, this gentleman was one of the smartest men that I've ever met in my life, and he's taught me a lot about firearms industry, the science behind ballistics and whatnot, and just life in general. I absolutely respect this man, and I want to make sure that if I do name drop it, he's okay with it, and he's gives his blessing, basically. So I hope you can respect that up until the point I do reveal it, or I can reveal it. And nothing that I'm going to say is going to be to the detriment of the company. I'm not going to reveal trade secrets, load data, anything crazy like that. Most of the stuff is either funny or interesting anecdotes. So to kick off the story, we had a worker who had a family member that brought in a Type 99 Arisaka that her grandfather brought back from World War II, and had no idea what it was. They wanted to know more about it, its history, see if we can make ammunition for it. And my boss, he didn't care so much for military surplus. He was really into precision rifles, ballistics, stuff like that. And he likes history, but he wasn't as fanatical about military surplus as I was. So anytime we had something like that come in the shop, he knew I would go googly eyes over it and have a blast working on it. So he tasked me with, figuring out, what was the deal with this rifle and if we can make ammunition for it. Well, as soon as I walked up there, I knew it was a Type 99. Most of the times in the firearms industry, if you have somebody who says, I have this old Army gun and I don't know what it is, usually it's either a Carcano of some sort or it's a Arisaka. Some of them sporterized, some of them in original configuration, but usually that's what it is. So just from doing basic research right off the bat, I found out it was Type 99. It was produced by the Toyo Kagoyo arsenal in Hiroshima. And for those of you that don't know, Toyo Kagoyo eventually became what we know today as Mazda. That was a very interesting thing. I handed the rifle back to him and said, here's a 100-year-old Mazda sitting in your hands. And they were like, wait, what? And I told them a little bit about the history, that that particular plant in Hiroshima was right behind a small hill or a mountain, depending on how you would categorize it. And basically that hill helped shield the factory from a lot of the blast and kept it in operation, and it was fairly quickly put back into use following the war. And they continued making Mazda vehicles, and they continued doing other things. And that was an extremely cool thing to learn. I told the gentleman we could make ammunition for it. It's a very simple process, even if you couldn't find the brass. PPU did start making some, but it's fairly easy to convert. It's basically an 8 Mauser derivative. You could convert it with 8mm by 57. You can use 30-06 cases and shorten them to make the brass. And the projectiles are 311 or 312, basically 303, the same diameter used in the 303 British. And that was extremely cool. I got to make that ammunition for them, and went home that week, and I was actually preparing for my first trip to H&K. I've always been a fanboy of Heckler and Koch. I know all of us growing up, we played games like Rainbow Six, or saw some of the movies, and the MP5, the PSG-1, the HK-33. Those guns they were the kings of cool in the 80s, 90s, and even the 2000s, with guns like the 416 and the G36 still rocking on today. Well, as when I was doing my packing, my brother had struck up a conversation, and he was talking about, out of nowhere, the atomic bomb dropping. I believe he was in high school at the time, and that's where he watched, it was probably the movie Fat Man and Little Boy, and we did some research. I believe he had a little project that he was working on, and it was a really interesting brainstorming session, learning about the different things that went on during that time. And it was kind of eerie, but sure, coincidences happen, but what are the odds that I'm working on a rifle that was made at the Hiroshima plant, and now we're discussing the bomb droppings and its effects on U.S. history and world history. So the next day, I flew out to Ashburn, Virginia, and like I said, I was getting ready for the HK-416 Armorers course. Got there, probably mid-morning, late or early afternoon on Sunday, and the course wasn't going to start until Monday morning. So when I got to the hotel, the very first thing the hotel people said is like, hey, if you're trying to kill time, you don't have anything to do, we have a free shuttle that takes you down to the Dulles Airport Museum, which is a part of the Smithsonian. And I was like, oh, absolutely. This is a, history nerd's little dream. But also at the same time, it was free. So it was like, hey, you can't turn down something that's free, right? So, you can picture me, young 20-something-year-old, all by himself, walking up the staircase, as giddy as can be, to see what was inside the museum. And lo and behold, what is the first airplane that I see when I walk into the atrium? It's the Enola Gay. I swear I probably stood there for 2 or 3 minutes in awe, and kind of wondering, what kind of fate, journey am I on that, three things, and it was more than that, but three things back to back to back that were memorable, happening about the same subject at the same time, without any sort of planning or, knowing that this airplane was going to be there. I'm sure all the other people were standing there like, what's this weirdo doing? Just staring with his jaw on the floor and whatnot. But it was surreal seeing that plane. Like there's some sort of fate or something that, led me to this point. I know some people are less spiritual, or, some people believe in superstition and stuff like that. I'm not necessarily one of those, but it's like, wow, this is where it kind of shows you, how far away you really are from history if you kind of just step outside, do something random. Sometimes these unplanned, spontaneous trips will teach you a lot and may connect with each other in ways you would never know. And also, when I was going through the boards that they had there, giving them basic information about the plane, I noticed that their launching point was Tinian. And another one of those coincidences, you never realize how far you are from history. My particular unit in the reserves, the Marine Corps Reserves, actually served on the island of Tinian and helped secure it for the airfield and everything they needed. And realizing that about my little reserve unit, it showed me how much I did not appreciate the history of my unit. There are so many, and that made me realize there's so many, National Guard units, Marine Corps Reserve units, Army Reserve units, even Coast Guard units that had such pivotal roles that most of the other mainline historians just gloss over or even just downplay. And this whole journey came to a completion a couple of years ago when I got to go to Fort Bliss for one of our annual training events. And that's when we learned that, our battalion commander told us the story about, you know, our unit going into Tinian to secure it. And also, Fort Bliss was one of the practice launching pads for the Enola Gay and Boxcar to practice for the flight to Japan when they were going to drop the bombs. And it once again it shows you, if you may not pay attention to these little pieces of history, but if you do, you realize how close you are to those stories, and you gain a much better appreciation for um, you gain a much better appreciation for these facts and these little tidbits that nobody ever would know. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little dive into a personal history journey of mine that taught me quite a bit and showed me, even as at a small molecular level, how close you could be to some really important turning points in history. And if you keep your eyes open and you're adventurous enough, you'll find them. Thank you very much for watching. If you have a personal story, please share it down in the comments. I'd love to hear your little history journeys that you've had. And I hope that this sparks a little history journey of your own. Maybe you'll see something and it appears old or appears just kind of benign, but you end up learning something really massive about history like I did. Thank you very much. Y'all have a good one.